Hi there, welcome back. Today's video is going to be about surveys, and it's going to be a very specific subset of the surveys. So most of the time when you take a survey, if the survey is funded by like an organization or a school, for example, you'll see what amounts to many people to be just a wall of text before you click through to the actual survey. What that wall of text is, it's something called informed consent. And it basically summarizes the survey as well as how they're going to pay you, what they're going to pay you, how many people they're looking for in the survey. Sometimes it discusses demographics loosely. It also discusses the governing body or board that approved it and gives you contact information. So you'll hear people talk about the informed consent in conjunction with something called an IRB, which is Institutional Review Board. This is a concept that any university has that is putting out funding for studies. And so the Institutional Review Board is really tasked with making sure that the study and the surveys within it are ethical and basically not scientifically problematic, not biased, things like that. So there's a whole process that goes into putting together the informed consent, as well as making sure that the IRB approves it before it goes out to everybody to where they pay the money and get the responses. So I'm going to quickly go through just like two IRB informed consent and the IRB information within them so that you know what you're looking for. And then I'm just going to discuss a few situations where I personally capture that information ahead of doing the survey. I know a lot of people just click through it, and that's fine, but I think everybody should be at least educated on what that text means for you and why in some cases it is a good idea to log that information. So I cut out or screenshot the informed consent out of a few surveys so as not to identify specific surveys or anything, but just to go over two of them and show you what's typically in there. So the informed consent will tell you, as this one did, what the topic of the survey is. This particular survey is going to tell you the demographics that they're looking for. So they're looking for people 18 years of age or older, which is a minimum MTurk requirement anyways, and living in the United States, which is obviously a qualification based on your location. It tells you how long the survey will take approximately. This is usually an average. It can vary on either side. It can take longer. It can take a shorter amount of time. A lot of times I think the informed consent buffers it on the higher side. So take that into account when you're looking at this. Then there's some sort of liability type statements. Your participation is voluntary, anonymous, responses will be kept confidential, and you cannot be directly identified, no foreseeable risks, and you may choose to participate in the study or stop at any time. And when they say stop, they mean you can stop the survey and return the hit, but you won't be paid. So that's the general structure of it. Then they give you the contact information. So you have some emails here, and these are usually the supervising professors or supervisors on the board that are essentially allowing this to happen and approving it. So then sometimes there's valuable information in informed consent. Like here, it says, note, if you've previously completed our survey, we would still like your participation. That's not typical. A lot of times if you've done a survey in a close time frame, they don't want you to do it again. So again, you might find information in there that might help with some decision making. So I just usually skim it, at the very least, skim it. And then it'll say, thank you for your interest. And you usually have to click through. And the click is your approval or your acceptance of these terms. Okay. So that's one example. Another example, this one, consent to participate in a research study. So again, your informed consent, the title and the principal investigators. This one is a little more involved. So there's the typical, you are being invited. Your participation is voluntary. Read this form carefully. And there's the co-investigator for questions. So they go through a purpose. And within that purpose, we can see that there are some requirements, U.S. workers, So you can see what they want to do. Procedures, you'll be presented with a web-based survey, 5 minutes to complete, and gives a little bit of a preview of what's coming up. Benefits, a lot of these will say there's no direct benefit for you, but your participation will help us understand X, Y, and Z. Usually, a lot of them do put in any risks and discomforts, and these serve almost as like a trigger warning. So if there's something triggering within the topic, and we probably, anybody who's been on MTurk for any length of time understands that there are some topics on here that can be heavy. And so a lot of times risks and discomforts will include that. So if you are sensitive to certain triggers, you're probably well served to just check and see if there's anything in the informed consent that would be problematic for you. Confidentiality, again, this is how they intend to keep your information safe and confidential. And different informed consent will go into different depth about how they handle the data, but they should all basically assure you as to how the data is going to be used and potentially how long it will be stored in some cases. Future research, your de-identified information may be used or shared with other researchers without your additional consent. So again, it's sort of like marketing information where they make you kind of just say yes to everything. You can't kind of pick and choose which elements you like and don't like. And this one's pretty long. Then it goes into compensation. It tells you exactly how you'll be compensated through Amazon payments and for what amount. Again, they reiterate that your participation is voluntary. And then if you have any questions, you can contact the following people. If you have, and this one says, if you have any questions about your rights as a research participant or complaints about the research, you may call the IRB. And then in this particular one, you have to click, I agree to participate, or I don't agree. And if you don't agree, it's going to kick you out of the survey, and that's going to be that. So if you're ready to go forward, you need to be careful about making sure you click agree to participate. So why am I telling you this? Why is it important? So this information is important if you are concerned that a requester is going to reject you. If they're a new requester or they're a questionable requester, my suggestion is take a quick screenshot of this information and have it available. Even if you just capture the email addresses and the IRB information, have that available to you. So in the situations where it will come up is sometimes a researcher will reject surveys because the survey code was screwed up. And so on their end, they can't match you as a basically faceless, nameless worker who's only identified by an alphanumeric string of digits to whatever the output is on their end. They can't connect them. So they can't verify anybody's information. And that's a flaw in their setup of the system. So sometimes researchers who are green or new to it will just completely throw out the whole batch and they'll reject everything, not understanding the implications of that for the worker. Things like that. Sometimes you'll see researchers and you'll kind of question whether they're just trying to get data for free, not having to pay for anything that they got. I'm not going to say that there are researchers out there doing it on purpose. I don't know that. But I've seen a fair amount of researchers that appeared to be green and did what amounted to some unethical things as they tried to collect their data and make the appropriate payments. So what you want to do in a situation like that is your first line of defense is going to be the investigator and the co-investigator that emails are in the informed consent. You want to go ahead and email them either outside of this, usually it has to be outside of the system, or you can send it through MTurk, but a lot of times that's going to the researcher, could also be going to a general mailbox. So you can take the email addresses and email them and explain your situation, provide any screenshots or information that you have or any recollection of the survey that you may have, and hope that they answer you in the affirmative, or they at least give you more information to understand that your rejection was in fact warranted if you felt it wasn't. From there, if you don't hear from them or you get an answer that you don't feel is right, that's the time when you want to escalate it to the IRB. And from there, you take the information that's again in the informed consent, whether it be a phone number or an email, and you basically make the same case that you made before, adjust it for whatever the investigator told you, if they told you anything and replied, and then basically make your case as to why you think it should not be rejected. A lot of times, even the threat of escalating to the IRB has the the requesters reversing rejections. Other times, it's not an effective tool. I think without being vindictive or nasty, you can just factually say that, I still believe I'm in the right. I still feel the rejection is unfair, and I'm going to escalate to the IRB. If you have to escalate the IRB, then go ahead, in the same professional manner that you did to the investigator, just lay out your case. So that's essentially how you would use that information. And just as a quick aside, requesters do have the ability within a 30-day period to reverse rejections on their own. They don't need Amazon MTurk support to do it. If I don't have a separate video, I will provide a video with directions that's specifically for requesters to help them reverse rejections. But just be clear about your rights. They do have the ability to reverse rejections within the 30-day period. Aside from that, if a requester and the IRB are just digging their heels in and saying, nope, it was rejected for good cause and we're not going to reverse the rejection, my suggestion is to then tell them that you want to make sure that your information will be deleted from their bank of survey responses, and it will not be used in their study, because the whole informed consent is on the premise of you're going to do X for us and we're going to pay you Y, and that's the agreement. They've violated that agreement, and therefore they cannot in good conscience and ethically, shouldn't be taking the information that they did not pay for. They did not hold their end of the bargain, and you can ask them to not use your data. So I'm not guaranteeing you by any stretch that this is going to have every rejection you get on a survey reversed, but these are the steps that you can take to get that, have that conversation with the requesters or the IRB if you have to. So that's why I say at the beginning, it's sometimes worth taking that quick screenshot or jotting down the information that you see, email addresses, or honestly, even taking a quick picture with your phone. And this is another aside, and I apologize, but some surveys don't allow you to screenshot. They don't want information for whatever the structure of the survey. They don't want you screenshotting and saving information. So for the purposes of the IRB, though, I think that it's important enough that you should jot it down or take a quick picture or something. Now, if it's a requester that you've done a lot of work with and you're not concerned about them and they have like a green rating on Turk Review and all of that, then by all means, just skip through the informed consent and just consent to it, move on. But if you're not sure, or they're a new requester, or they have kind of a checkered history, it's just a little bit of insurance that takes a few seconds to grab the email addresses out of the informed consent before you agree to it. So that's it. As I said, just real quick kind of best practice on informed consent and IRBs. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know, and like and comment, and please subscribe, because there will be many more videos coming in the near future.